Welcome to the Law of Positivism podcast. I'm Shireen Oberg, and I'm a yoga teacher and author devoted to the path of healing and heart-based living. And I want to help you to step into what you truly are and to your highest potential. On this podcast, I share with you tools and insights to help you move ever forward on your spiritual and healing path. With guests from all over the world, from different wisdom traditions, I wish to create a web of loving energy that permeates the whole world to create more love and peace. You can connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for more guidance and love. Hello to all you loving beings, and welcome to this week's episode. I'm so excited today to share with you everything around devotion, remembrance, and divine connection with Rebecca Campbell. And Rebecca Campbell is a writer, devotional artist who leads activating workshops internationally, giving people an experience of their soul. She is the best-selling author of numerous books and oracle decks, including Light is the New Black and The Work Your Light Oracle, and the creator of the Rise Sister Rise membership. Through all of Rebecca's creations, she encourages people all over the world to spend more time with their soul and connect to their own inner temple. And this call and this conversation was so beautiful. It was truly like meeting a soul sister again from other lifetimes, and she's in this magical place in England, which I've been called to over and over again, which I also almost made a pilgrimage to, because for me it was truly a spiritual place to visit, and I can truly recommend this power place of Glastonbury. And today with Rebecca, I'm sharing everything around these topics around our lineage, ancestry, and reincarnation, and how it's all connected. We talk about starseeds, rose healing, and the remembrance of what you truly are. And Rebecca shares her amazing story in everything that she's doing today, and how she moved from Australia to England. And yeah, she's so inspirational. Her oracle card deck is so beautiful, and she has her new book coming out now that you can see in the links in the show notes, and it's called Letters to a Starseed. It's so beautiful, and I'm really grateful to be sharing this episode with you, and I hope that it helps you on your own journey. And as you know, my book is going to be released right after summer solstice in June, and it's available to pre-order. And it's really a book to dive deeper into yourself, your mind, your body, your emotions, your energy, and also your spiritual path and your purpose. So it all goes together. And I think right now it's a lot of things that are happening in our lives and in the world that are calling us to live in our truth. So I hope that this book can help as many as possible on their path. And if this is something that you are called to do, you can check it out, and also join my community on Instagram and Facebook if you want to take part of daily guidance and just get more insights into this. And I also really want to thank my sponsors for this show, which is Ace of Air. It's a newly launched beauty and wellness brand committed to products that put people and planet above all. Everything that they do is sourced with integrity, sustainably grown, it's kind to animals and the planet, and is backed by research. And their line of clean, vegan, and cruelty-free skincare and supplements have been synergistically formulated at the intersection of herbalist wisdom and modern science, focusing on rituals that work from the inside out. And everything that we do and choose is energy. So when we have an intention to do something good for ourselves and others and the planet, we also take conscious decision of what we're consuming in our body and through the way we live. So they're inspired by Mother Nature's ability to create abundance without waste. And they're the first and only beauty and wellness brand designed to be entirely circular and fully zero waste. And you can explore more about Ace of Air at aceofair.com. I really love them, the founders, and yeah, I'm so blessed to have them as my show sponsors. And I hope you enjoy this week's episode with Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca. Welcome to the podcast.
So great to be here with you, Shireen.
So happy to have you here. I'm very grateful. And I want to ask you if you want to share one daily mindfulness practice that you have in your life.
I'd say the one I'm doing at the moment is because I'm a new mum, and I started this probably when my son was about 4 months old, and each night we just have a bath together and I just kind of look into his eyes for sometimes it's only like 5 seconds because he's wriggling around. But I think actually I've never thought of that practice as actually a practice, but I think that is the practice that I'm showing up to with the most rhythm. You know, there's been periods of my life that where my spiritual practice has been very disciplined in a sense of like it's the same meditation or the same chant for however long, sometimes many, many years, and then it might shift. But the past couple of years, and actually since I moved to Glastonbury, it's been changing quite a bit. And so sometimes it's earth-based, sometimes it's chanting, sometimes it's drinking rose tea and doing a meditation. But I think, when I look at it, that's actually my most regular mindful practice at the moment.
That's so beautiful. What a lovely mindfulness practice, and looking into your baby's eyes and soul and everything. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I love that you say also that you've reached a state where you can like change and feel into what you're needing day by day. And the more rigorous practice is good for just getting into it and starting your practice in a way so that the mind can get used to it. But then you can also move beyond that in your own life. So that's a great.
What's your favorite?
Well, for me, the first thing in the morning for me to just land back into my body from being in the astral world during the morning, it's just to feel my body. It's not a specific routine or asana practice, but it's just like laying down on the mat and starting to stretch the body and connect with the breath to feel like I'm back in my body. And then right now I have an evening practice with satsang and kirtan and the meditation of those evenings when I'm home. I join in on that, since I just did recently a training. But one of the most important ones are just going out in nature. So
great.
Yeah, it's beautiful now, and when it's starting to get warmer here as well. Our spring never arrived here in Sweden, so now we went from winter to summer almost.
I feel like our summer has not arrived for sure. I'm like, come on, come back.
Yeah, I know, we need it so much. And I mean, I've been following you on your journey for a long time now, and I would love for you to let the listeners know, if they haven't already seen you or seen everything that you're creating, to tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do.
For sure. So I think that the essence of my work is around weaving the soul back into our everyday life and living a soul-led life. And so the basis of that is, it's based on that simple principle that we're a soul having a human experience. And over the years, I've been kind of documenting my journey. I believe that the awakening process never ends, and that sometimes it's ecstatic and sometimes it's kind of excruciating, and that our whole life is an awakening process. Our whole life is the spiritual journey. Since moving to Glastonbury, nature's always been a big part of my work, particularly like flowers and the rose, with my creative process in particular. But since moving to Glastonbury, I feel like I've kind of begun diving into the depths of the earth, if that makes sense. And I've just got this sense that really what I've really been focusing on is how we can kind of bring the two worlds together, like this, what we in the West are like the spiritual world and just the normal everyday world. And I think it's really important, particularly now, that we bring these two worlds back together. I think all Indigenous traditions, and if you track back enough, we're all from Indigenous traditions. They saw the earth as sacred and holy, all beings as sacred and holy, and particularly nature and us as being nature rather than going into nature or existing in nature or owning land and all of that. And so, that's where I've been really called lately, to kind of look at our relationship with the earth and how we can kind of weave the sacred back in, or weave ourselves back into the sacred.
Yeah, in so many beautiful ways. Thank you for sharing that. That's so beautiful. And I wanted to ask you, because you came, so certain things brought you to England on your path, and I would love to hear how this transformational event and awakening happened in your life when you were young.
So I think I'd always been fascinated by what I now call the soul, but I didn't really have the words for it. I think, like many people, and maybe a lot listening, I just had this like this inner call, or this yearning to kind of remember why I came here, and just this like deep sense of urgency, really, to kind of do what I came here to do. And in my first book, I speak about that, and I call that type of person a light worker, someone who, like, they awaken and they begin to remember why they choose to be here at this point in history. And when I was in high school, like early high school, I had a couple of experiences that definitely like woke me up, as in I couldn't explain them, and so then I began learning about the unseen world, learning about the journey of the soul, and all of those things that I definitely was not taught at school. And then when I was when I finished school, I instead of going to university, I took a year off and took about, I think I had like 5 jobs. So I was working so hard to just save up to be able to come over to Europe. And when I look back now, I can really see that like something was calling me here. At the time, it wasn't this big conscious thing, but I found myself in Ireland and Scotland in particular, and parts of the UK like Glastonbury too, And I look back now and I can see that I was like on this pilgrimage to the land of my ancestors. But I wasn't conscious to it at the time, but I could feel it. I could feel this connection. And I look back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was so courageous and definitely led by something beyond. And it's interesting as well, because on that trip, I actually went to Sweden twice, which was like not part of my plan at all. I had a friend who had a friend who was working in Stockholm, and yeah, and so just in this trip that I took, which was like I think it was like 8 or 9 months, I went to Sweden twice, and I've found out since that I do have ancestry, like Scandinavian ancestry, and so I wonder if that is part of that. But yeah, then I went back to Australia, and I did my university, got a job, and did the things that we're all kind of like meant to do, you know, work hard and that whole like make it in a man's patriarchal world and all of that. I'd always been a really hard worker. I think it's something I'm working on easing up as I grew older. And yeah, and then I then came back to London, and yeah, I was working hard still, but then the awakenings began to kind of like turn up a little bit. And I experienced quite a lot of losses in succession, like end of a 11-year relationship, loss of a couple of really, really good friends. And it was around my Saturn returns, which is like 28 to 30, around that age. And this passion that I'd always had for learning about the journey of the soul and the unseen world and the sacred, it just began to call me closer to it. And I began realizing that this whole time I'd been kind of scared to lean into it. And I just hadn't seen it as a profession, even though in my visions, I had seen myself doing the life that I'm living now, like writing books and all of that. But I couldn't quite work out how the path would unfold. And it was around then that through that kind of rock bottom period, at the end of that's when I experienced quite a significant Kundalini Shakti awakening experience. And yeah, it was around that time where it just became clear that I just could not keep living the life that I'd really consciously created, but just was not in alignment with who I was at that soul level. So yeah, that's probably the first two significant awakening experiences. And I've had several since then as well. And I like mentioning that because I think that it can seem like the awakening experience is just glorious. And even if it is, you know, seemingly instant and spontaneous, it often takes a lot of integration, because whether it's just like from a mind point of view, but often it's physical as well, the world that we once believed has now changed. And so even if it is spontaneous, it takes a lot of integration. So I think it's really important to kind of speak to that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. That's a beautiful journey. I was sitting and nodding the whole time because I felt like you were talking about my journey as well into like these different, like you said, there's almost like different initiations throughout life that come and that lead us on the further on the path. And I think, yeah, I've been on my path. It's been like with you, I can't remember any time in my life that I wasn't on this magical and mysterious path, because I remember as a child and definitely as a teenager reading all sorts of books and getting very deep into my own type of spirituality, and certain things initiate us into it, like a loss can be a way of initiation as well. Like that's when we I think that was the first time I experienced my like other senses beyond the five senses. That's when my grandfather passed away in a different country, in Kurdistan, where my heritage is from. And then the next initiation was actually when I, exactly what you talked about, when you're in this, you do you study whatever you think is great from a society perspective, and then you go into this masculine world of, for me it was like the digital and IT world, and it moved me also to Ireland. So I think a lot of
Did it? Wow.
Yeah, I lived in Ireland and I've always felt a connection with Britain and Ireland, and it's a magical place on earth to be. But a lot of things started to happen there, and these small and big initiations. So I love that on your journey, that because you come up to a point also where you can't deny or stop or like you just have to move into it. You can't, it's like the whole universe is just pushing you towards a direction. So it's so important to follow that calling, and it comes sometimes as an easy thing, but a lot of times it's also like challenges that come up, and it challenges us until we do align, and then we go into a new cycle. And it's like you said with Saturn return, that was like a new cycle that opens up and shift. And I think this year has also been a new cycle opening up to even more things, because we had this period of time where we are also being challenged to raise our vibration and to as a collective. So this year has probably been like an initiation for all of us in one way or another as well.
It's so true. Yeah. And what age are you?
I'm turning 33 this year in July.
33. Oh, that's a powerful age. Yeah.
It's a lot of threes now, 33s in my life.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've been finding out about so it's like around, well, they call it midlife, but obviously we're living a lot longer, so it's not quite midlife anymore. But around, I'm 39, but it's to do with Pluto square Pluto transit, and I'm going through that at the moment, which is like it's another version of Saturn returns. It's quite an internal time. So yeah, I'm fascinated by that. And I feel like when I went through Saturn returns, like I had no idea that it existed until after it. And so did you know before you went into it?
I've been studying astrology since I was like 20. So I was very aware that my Saturn return was coming up, but I didn't understand how long the whole transition actually was going to take and what it meant, because it felt like a rebirth, like every perspective within me changed of what life is and what I'm supposed to be or not be, and everything changed. But it was like a long transition, and I think it's not until now it feels like that has come into, like the effects of that have come into place.
Yeah, I hear you.
So, but yeah, a lot of people go through it, and the awareness can be a good thing, but also there's no way to prepare for it.
It's so true. Yeah, and I think it's the same with like Kundalini Shakti awakenings. I'm going through something at the moment which is very different from anything I've been through before. Like anytime I've been through that before, it's been more ecstatic. Whereas now it's kind of like bringing up, it's like the Shakti's bringing up everything that is not that. And, I was having a conversation with someone the other day. It was actually my doctor who surprised me with his experience of it, because I just mentioned it to him. And what he said was just so incredible. And he was like, when we go through these, and they are initiations, and whether they're planetary, energetic, whatever they are, it's like there's no guidebook to it. It's how it moves through you, and it's helpful to know other people who have been through their own version of it. And I was even talking to a girlfriend of mine, reflecting on that conversation with my doctor, and what she said is, I trust the process you're going through, or I trust the grace moving through you. And I think that when we spoke about that, and I can see that that's what we are for each other. And I think that's such an important reframe, as where all of us on our own spiritual journey, on our own invitation into initiation, whatever it is. And there's never the step-by-step guide. And we can kind of walk each other through it without saying this is the way to do it, or this is the way to do it. That's a conversation that's like, it feels really kind of fresh within me at the moment, that I'm contemplating a lot about.
Yeah, that's powerful. And the Pluto transit that you're going through is probably also creating it. That's like the dark and the hidden and the psychic and the subconscious and all of that. And
totally.
Right. And then that it's also an aspect of the yin, or the divine feminine as well.
So true.
That it's so beautiful. And in regards to this, because in my yoga training we talked a lot about this awakening of the Kundalini, and there's these really these methods and these techniques and practices that are being done, that can also be a lot of based in our intellectual, logical mind. But then I think, like for me, when I lived in Dublin, there was a time where I felt like I renounced my body during that time. Like I wasn't a part of my body anymore. And it was so strange, because I was still in the world doing everything, but I was not there. And I practiced actually a lot of like these guided meditations and journeys, and those woke up a lot in me. And I had an experience where I at least felt this channel within, like physically felt the channel of within our along our spine. And whether it was some type of awakening or not, I don't know, but what I felt was probably I wasn't completely ready for it, because I was in this, I think I was not that conscious that one would think that you should be when you're practicing these things. I think I was in an astral plane, but I felt my physical body. It was like imagine like a pipe going through from your pelvis all the way up, like very strongly. And it was physically very strong and painful, but it was, the beautiful thing was that in the end, hearing sacred sounds, that was something. So I don't know what that experience was, but it was probably something that also initiated me further, and taking steps to then leave Dublin as well after 2 years there, and coming back here. And as you said, these when you feel called to certain places, like you've been, when you moved from one side of the world to this part of the world, which is also like, if it's in your ancestry, it's in your physical DNA as well. So
Right.
you're made up from that nature that is on those islands. So it's like it's like the birds when they're, you know, flying to different places, and it's so natural. But I think a lot of people don't follow that calling like you did.
It's so true. And I'm curious, when you're mentioning the sacred songs, was that when you were in Dublin? Like, clearly you are interested in all kinds of music, with having studied kirtan as well. But was that like Celtic music, or was it more like
I actually,
mantra?
yeah, exactly. I heard the mantras, and it was like thousand voices singing Om, and it was, yeah, it was. I freaked out because it was like someone suddenly shaking me, waking me up. So I was first like shocked, but after that, I think there was a lot of cleansing. I think during a very short time period. When I came to Dublin, it was like, yeah, a renunciation. All of a sudden, I detached completely from my body, and it was very, yeah. I became introverted again, which I always was my entire life, up until I was teenager and young 20s. But then I went into like this hermit time. I think it would have been better if I was like out in the forest alone. But I had this, you know, this responsibility to work, and I had gotten a job there that I really thought that but everything that happened in Dublin, like Law of Positivism was created there, like back in 2014, when I did all this work there. That's when all of this was birthed. It wouldn't have, I think, if I would have stayed here. So I had to do that journey. And in like now in hindsight, I understood what a sacred place I was in. I didn't know that back then, what this island had. It was really, like you just said, this dark and Pluto energy there, I think, as well. That's what I experienced, like the transformational thing. And yeah, but it led me actually to also into this path of meditation. I found like a Buddhist center there, and I practiced Iyengar yoga for a while, and it really was a journey. And I met really special people there that I was meant to meet, and yeah, I haven't been back for a while. But this pilgrimage, like sometimes we don't know that it is a pilgrimage. It just, you just go there, you have to go there, and then things happen, and that's where the I think like certain places, like also Glastonbury where you live, is I went there really spontaneously. I had been thinking, it's been calling me, I've been having dreams about it, but I really just from one day to another, I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna book tickets. I went there and had these really amazing experiences, because the whole area is so charged with energy there. Really, really special. And up in the tour, hearing the voices up there of women, like it was, I had really intense experiences there that I'm carrying with me. It was really beautiful.
Yeah, it is a special place, and that, like, there's obviously other special places around the world, but I think that, yeah, places that there's a Celtic word called imrama, which is essentially, it's like a journey that the soul takes you on. And yeah, Glastonbury for me had been one of those places where it was like my body had been moved there before my mind had realized. And I'm just talking like before I even moved here. I mean, I didn't even plan to move here at all. My husband and I didn't at all, but it just kind of everything came together in order. It's like it just planted us here. And prior to that, that's how it felt every time I came here. And I had been living in London a while before it was time for me to come here and spend proper time here. And I think that these places, and of course we can connect to them by distance as well. But yeah, these places that sometimes our body takes us, sometimes our soul takes us. I'm fascinated by, is it the body, like our ancestry, or is it the soul? Like, what is it that brings us there? And I personally think it is both. And that, like, for example, somewhere like Glastonbury, I'm working with the rose at the moment. I'm working on a rose oracle, and what I'm discovering about the rose is that it's a renowned healer. We kind of all know that. We obviously also know the connection with love and all of that. But what I'm discovering about the rose is that it gives us what we need. And I think sacred places do the same thing. And I think also we can tend to them too. And that different people are called to different places at certain times. And I've seen also, like in my visions, that like many of us have been incarnating in all corners of the world, maybe in places that we, from a soul perspective, weren't incarnating in before. And it's like there's this web being created. When I speak to people, not on the street, but just particularly with my work, I do hear this kind of like echo of like this kind of loneliness, but I don't mean it in the sense of like, oh, I have no friends loneliness, but just this kind of like feeling misplaced. And I think like colonialism and patriarchy is part of that, because we've disconnected ourselves from the world. Like we've created a world on top of the world. And I think we are returning to that original world, which is where the sacred is woven into everyday life. But I do also feel like many of us have reincarnating in places that where maybe our soul isn't used to, for example. What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. Like this, I think that now is the time that we're creating this beautiful grid all over the world, and priestesses from different places, and also very wise men, and that we are, like you said, for example, so my heritage is from Kurdistan, but something brought me here to Sweden. And I feel very, for a while I maybe I didn't feel that connection. I mean, I've been here since I was 1, but now I'm starting to understand like the magic, and learning also about the lineage of the healers here that have been in the Nordics previous to the, that Christianity came here, and all of that. So I really think that we are now, there must be a reason why we have seen this big migration in the world, but also that we are, I think, just as you, like you, maybe you feel both connected to the place where you were born, but also seeing, like when I went to Australia was really special as well, actually, because I had food poisoning there for some reason, but it was because I needed to slow down. So something happened. And then we went to New Zealand, and that's when I felt this healing. But at the same time, I said, but this looks like Scotland. Like this is it's Earth. It's the same. Like it's not even. We think about these other places, exotic places, but in the end, everything is so connected. Like we're still on this planet in this physical incarnation, and I think that we're spread out and being able also to work like this across time and space is so beautiful. So
it's so true. It's so true. And yeah, I think that for me, I grew up in Australia, which, of course, if you really look at it, it's like it's the oldest civilization supposedly in the world is the Indigenous Australians, the Aboriginals. And I loved nature there. I loved, nature was such a big part of the way I lived, but I also felt a disconnection. And I look back now and I think it's the ancestral roots that I felt disconnected to. Like, I've just done this incredible course on cultural awareness based on the history of Australia, which is very different to the history that I learnt about at school. And it's heartbreaking what happened. And, of course, we know, like, we didn't personally do it because it's generations before and it's when consciousness was different. And I think that we're kind of waking up and realizing just how much harm has been done. And these sacred places around the world, like, I really feel that it is this disconnection from the earth as divine mother. And, if you look up the definition of nature in the dictionary, it literally talks about like stones and plants and, landscapes and all of that. And it specifically says not humans. And I think that is where so much of the harm has been done, And I think that with myself, and it sounds like you are the same way, I've always been kind of like called to these sacred places. And I think that part of that is feeling the connection of ancient people who were living in that harmony. Like, have you spent much time, or were you born in Kurdistan, or have you spent time there?
No, I wasn't. I was born in Prague because my parents had to leave very early age from Kurdistan. And I feel extremely connected to, I haven't been back yet because it also took many years before it was like safe to travel. And now the past years has been much better, but it's the parts where we're from, it's been going up and down. So my father goes back pretty often because he has family. But for me, what I've realized is that because we're like the people of the mountains. So I was interviewing my grandmother, who's the only grandparent that's left right now, and I want to write stories of Kurdish women. I asked her how it was. I think she's 85 this year. I can't even remember because she's like a really fun 30-year-old when you talk to her. She's so open and happy.
Wow.
She grew up in a very different society when I was interviewing her about her journey as a young girl. And also she told me how if someone got sick, there was very little medicines, like allopathic medicine. So they used to go to the mountain, and they had a special name for different types of plants there that they used to pick. And I see in my body when it's winter here, how my body is craving for that warmth and sun. And so I feel my genetics, even though I've been here all my life. And what I loved about Ireland was that there was mountains.
Right.
Something that I'm really missing here in Sweden, because it's very flat in this part of Sweden. I really love to go to places where I see hills and mountains.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. Wow. Isn't that interesting? So it's like, is perhaps that's cellular, like the cell memories, rather than, I've been, since I moved to Glastonbury around the same time, I began studying intuitive herbalism. And it wasn't specifically like for my work, like not to necessarily get a qualification. It was literally just like, there was this point I was doing lots of workshops, and I said to a friend, I'm just like, I just feel like I can't talk about anything right now except for nature and flowers. And I'm like, I just am not interested. I just don't want to do it. And so often when you kind of like voice things like that, which are like deep in the soul, it's like, oh, that's the doorway. And so I began following that path. And it's so interesting because what I'm discovering through doing so is, like a whole nother world is opening up to me. But it feels like the world of my ancestors. And, I'm learning about like nourishing herbs, for example, which things like nettle and red clover, raspberry red leaf, dandelions, and obviously the rose is a flower, but learning about all of these herbs and like the nutritional qualities about them and the energetic and intuitive connections that we can have with them. And as I'm learning about them, all of a sudden I'm literally noticing that they're on my doorstep, like as in to the left of my door as I walk out of it. And as I'm kind of like collecting the herbs and drying the herbs and infusing the herbs, I think what's kind of been happening is that there is some kind of like cellular memory of my ancestors who did that with these plants and worked with these plants. And it's been incredible. And it's so not what I expected would happen. But I think it's really incredible. And yeah, I think I think what you shared about almost like the mountains being in your bones, or I think that's really beautiful. I traveled from Turkey down to Egypt in 2010. And so we went through parts of Kurdistan, like Syria. We didn't go Iraq or Iran, but I think it was like, I don't know if those trips are possible now with where the world's at. But I remember particularly in the borders of Turkey and Syria, like we went to Aleppo as well, but in the like the around, I can't remember the city we visited and the town we visited in particular, but I can see it. I can see the land, and I can remember what we were told there, and you could feel it in your bones. And I remember the phrase of the seat of civilization, and how that land is just so ancient and so such a crucial part of humanity's story. And just like how many incredible just ancient relics were just there on the ground, on the like right there. Yeah. So what an incredible place to be from as well.
Oh, yeah, it's so beautiful. I just felt my heart got so warmed when you said that, and you were in the Kurdish parts, because yeah, I mean, there's been findings of like goddess temples and these, like, from the areas where we come from. A specific goddess had the first even encounter before I even was aware of the goddess. That goddess showed up for me, Ishtar. And
wow.
Yeah, I had no idea. Like, I had heard that name once when I was a child. I had a friend who had that name, and the visuals I got of her, and then when I looked it up and saw it and said, this must be some ancestral thing, because why this particular, I've had seen other goddesses, you know, like you see the Hindu goddesses, and but yeah, this was really like not maybe a well-known story either. So I think that when you're talking, I'm getting like these it's like we have been probably doing a lot of the same things, because you're talking about, first of all, the rose. And I have to say that I gave a healing session today, and the rose did come up, and the rose really wanted to be part of this person's life in her healing journey. So I just felt that synchronicity when you talked about it, and how I even gave her a drops of tincture, rose tincture. And then you're speaking about the plants, which I have just, I think the past month, started to get into, exactly for the same reason as you, mostly for my own practice, not to get a certification or such, but more like, how do I commune more with nature? So I bought, actually, now we have a full forest here with a lot of stuff, but I wanted to start with it immediately. And I bought nettle, and I bought all these different dried herbs, and been actually taking in the medicine of nettle. And it's been so, and also steaming with it. And it's been so beautiful and so nourishing. And it's, yeah, just like having that connection with earth in that way. And yeah, realizing our body is earth, it's no separation. So I think that's so beautiful. Everything that you mentioned is like, yes. This is exactly what I'm trying to learn and do. Maybe nature during this Taurus season is also speaking to us even deeper, because I feel like this started in this season about like 3 weeks ago. Like,
wow, what a beautiful journey you're on.
You too. I feel like we're really diving into a lot of the same things. And I also want to ask you, because I think we both have been truly called to be in something that I've been longing to be in for many years, and fully be in, that is devotion and bhakti. And I want to ask you about that on your journey. What called you to this path? And I love exactly like everything that you've been speaking about, the devotional practice of kirtan, and but also the way we live in devotion.
So I think that it must have been around 2010 when chanting first kind of entered my life, or I became aware of it. And yeah, there was a couple of people who led chanting. One was Nikki Slade, who ended up being a teacher of mine and is a really dear friend. And another one is a man in America called Guru Nam Singh. And when he's more of the Sikh tradition. Nikki has been on the kirtan path for, I think, like 30 or 40 years. And when I first started hearing devotional chanting, and kirtan in particular, I just could not stop crying. And it was like, but it wasn't sad tears as in like, oh, I'm falling apart here. It was the longing and yearning, but also the bliss of the bhakti. So of the nectar, the chant as the nectar, and the longing for the union and merging with the divine. And I think that the tears came because I think deep down, maybe all of us, but certainly me, and I can feel you too, I just had such a deep longing for it. And I think that so many of us, and particularly me growing up, I'd felt I was searching for it, and felt separate from it and also not separate from it. And so what the kirtan path and the bhakti path reconnected me to was that oneness. And so, like this morning, for example, I'd been feeling a bit disconnected, and my number one way to get back to connection, particularly like if I feel separate or hurt or mainly disconnected from that oneness, it brings me back every time. And I think that what's so beautiful about it is that what I was taught is that the chant exists in the field, like the sound field, the primordial field, and like it's a living thing. And all of the millions and millions and millions of people who've ever chanted that chant, which particularly the kirtan is like in Sanskrit, which is such a sacred language, which is like a seed. It holds the essence of what that chant is, and then it's fueled by all of the people who've ever shown up in devotion to that chant and with that chant. And that when we chant that chant, we're tapping into that collective field, into that primordial sound. And I think there's so much about sound technology that we don't even understand. And science is beginning to find and prove various different things. But it's I love it.
Too. Yes, I know that, like, it's also in the yoga lineage that I'm in is a part of it is, bhakti yoga, and that's actually they say it's the easiest way to self-realization and the communion with the divine and awakening, because it goes from the heart. And exactly what you said, like throughout my training, we had each evening, and still I'm joining that as well, kirtans in the evening. And there is one monk that one of the swamis that it's really beautiful because it's both women and men, so it's also I love that. And one of the monks, one particular chant, one particular song was so powerful that exactly the tears came, but it was not connected with an emotion. It was just a remembrance, and that, okay, now I'm here. And as soon as we start each evening with kirtans, it's like everything is gone, like everything is just releasing. And I love that about like if we really want to be in some form of devotion, like you said, these sounds, and when we're also singing the names of the deities, that is the physical embodiment of that energy and that deity. If we can chant to whatever Ishvara, whatever form of the divine that we want, but when we're doing it, we're really creating it in a physical tangible way.
I love that. And I love how you explained, with your training, and how it's like when the chant has its way with you, it just comes out of nowhere. And I think particularly when we're training intensely with it, or we're on the beginning of our journey with it, and it continues, of course. But what I found so incredible about observing during my training was that, because there was so many of it, well, not that many of us, it was like 21 maybe people, around that amount of people, but we're all so different, and we'd be singing these various different chants, and how different people resonated with different chants. And it wasn't like, oh yeah, I love this one, yeah, it's a real catchy tune kind of thing. It was this, it had to be soul, because you'd be listening to a chant and some people would be and singing with the chant, and some people would be unaffected, like that, it's great, enjoying it, feeling it, but just kind of fully present. Whereas there'll be a couple of people in different corners of the room who just get taken by the chant, and in great waves of grief come through as a wholly beautiful relief, and waves of bliss with someone else. And I just thought that was so interesting, just like seeing the chant like a wave in the room. Did you experience anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. And I love like the live kirtans when we're sitting together, and it becomes so warm within that circle, and the energy building, and this mantra, or this one particular that really, I don't know why it really affected me. So it's this Narayana, Narayana, Jaya Govinda Hare, Narayana. It's so, it was like, it just went so deep. And I was like, and also my teachers and one of the monks said that sometimes when we do get that specific effect of a mantra, specific effect of this singing, it's that we have probably a past life connection to that specific mantra. It can be that we once opened our third eye through that, because when we're doing this inner meditation with a mantra, it can really, it affects our whole system. I could feel like my heart, like the heart rate and everything, like these physical manifestations through the mantras.
Yeah, I totally know what you're talking about. Isn't it incredible?
It is amazing. And I know that you also play the harmonium, right?
I do.
Yeah, that's like my next, I'm looking for, I've been wanting one for years now, and I found like tablas, but I really want to get a really good harmonium, since I play the piano also, and I've been playing a little bit in yoga schools on the harmonium. How do you feel when you're playing that?
Oh, I love it. I love it because it brings such a depth to, like, the sound is just so, it's just such a full sound. And I love the harmonium, even just like setting it to a chord like C or A, and even if you're not playing the notes, it's just such a full-hearted sound. I love it. So you play tabla, so drums?
I have two of them at home, because there was a woman that had a Kundalini center in Stockholm that was closing a while ago. She's been doing it for so many years. So I got the tablas and I played a little bit, but I think that because since I was a child, I was drawn to the piano very much. Like it was like this crazy sensation in my body to play in that way with my fingers. So I think that the harmonium for kirtan will be truly something that I've probably done before, and you as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting with the harmonium as well, because in my training I learned that the harmonium actually came from France, and when the French went to India, I'm told that they brought that instrument there. So it really is like a weaving of Europe and India.
Definitely, yeah. One of the swamis that founded the ashram here in Europe was saying the same thing, that it.
Oh, right.
Because they use it as well in kirtan, and that it was brought there from Europe. So definitely, it's been like a weaving of two cultures, and now it's coming back here. So you're using that. I love it. it's so beautiful, and the different instruments together, tabla and the harmonium together, is so beautiful. It's like the perfect balance, the perfect.
Lovely.
Balance. And I just want to ask you, because when we look at these, when we learn about these different mythologies and deities and all of this, and your journey to Egypt, which also has been something that I've been wanting to do. I've seen it in my visions, and I grew up with my aunt that like growing up and seeing images of Egypt, because they used to travel there a lot in the, I think, the 90s, and yeah, since we have both the Kurdish and Arabic language, and yeah, and then I'm thinking about these experiences and synchronicities with these. Now you've written a book about letters to starseeds, and how have your journey with the starseeds been? Because we go from this plane to a whole different level of the universe.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's interesting. The book Letters to a Starseed, it kind of came to me a few years ago, like as in about, I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago. And I literally saw the book cover. It's this beautiful, it's kind of iridescent, otherworldly foil. And I'd seen the book and I knew the title, Letters to a Starseed, but it didn't manifest. Like it didn't go ahead, and it just wasn't the right timing, but I knew it would come. And last year, in 2020, I was writing a different book that is still not written. And I got the invitation to write that book that I had originally said, The Letters to a Starseed. And it was post me having birth and living here in Glastonbury, as I was like really diving into the connection with the earth. And as a result, the essence of the book changed a little bit, which I'm so glad about, because it would have been such a different book if I had have written it all those years ago. And so really what it is it's an invitation for starseeds. And to me, a starseed is someone who knows that we're not the center of the universe, who knows that there's way more to life itself than what we see here, and that we have experienced places and lifetimes and civilizations and even different parts of the universe other than right now, right here. And yeah, it really is. It's like letters and of encouragement, and some transmissions and invitations to encourage us to call all parts of our soul fully here now, to really commit to being home here, to really commit to like weaving the soul fully back into our everyday lives, as we're going through such a time of huge change and division and polarity. I think that particularly in the spiritual world, it's so important for us to weave these two worlds back together, because I think that those of us who are sensitive, who resonate with like being an old soul, for example, who maybe have this like yearning or longing for the union, it's so important for us to find ways to really integrate it into our everyday life, and to acknowledge, like Marion Woodman, her work spoke of this, which is based on Jung, Carl Jung, where he spoke about the tension of the opposites, like polarity, essentially, and like how important it is to be able to hold both together. And I think that's what is happening in these times that we're living in now, which, you know, it's between myth and story. And like we have the opportunity, and we always have as well, but with such a big waking up invitation happening all around the world. We have this opportunity to collectively realize that we have the invitation and power to create a new myth and story for humanity.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And there's so much to discover. Have you had any dreams or visions of other worlds as well?
Yeah, I definitely have. In my oracle decks, that's kind of why I started creating oracle decks, because I just had so many of these visions in my mind that I just wanted to kind of turn into actual art and actual visuals, So a lot of them are in my oracles. One particular place, Mintaka, which is part of Orion. Those cards, I have such a memory of them. And then, of course, there's other ones that are in there as well. But yeah, I feel like I do have these like memories imprinted in me. And in the Starseed Oracle, there's a card, which is the card that we started with. And I had such a clear vision of it. It was, and it's based on, and I've written about this in Letters to a Starseed and Letters in You Black, of this. I experienced it in a past life regression where I was taken back to the moment before my birth, where I was kind of given the choice of where to incarnate, what body, what family, all of that, as well as receiving what I call like a collective mission. And my understanding of a collective mission is like, I'm sure you and I have a joint collective mission, for example. And I remember looking through this kind of like watery, it's almost like this body of water through to the earth. And yeah, so that card is visualized as the I remember card. And then the fall into my arms card was actually a initiatory experience I had during my Kirtan training, where I was like taken into the center of the earth, into the arms of the Great Mother. And I saw the souls coming in through the left and leaving through the right, like a breath, like this life is just like a breath in the moment, and began singing in these different ancient languages that I did not know, which is not a normal occurrence for me. But it's all the Great Mother holding all of us. And, my experience of that was that she was kind of taking us into her arms and saying, I know that life on earth can be difficult, and there's a sweetness and the difficulty, the ecstasy and the agony, and that like no one's immune to that. That's the greatest healing experience of my life, that vision of that. I'm looking at some artwork that I've been working on with a new artist I'm working with, where I'm literally, it's the exact same initiatory experience, the vision that I had, where there's probably 3 different bits of art based on that. So my intention is that it always like that the oracle cards like hold the energetic experience, which is like such a big thing. Like, and you'd love this. The artist I'm working with, I'll do like a mood board, and then I'll do a video brief explaining it, and obviously then the words that go with it. But I've begun just the past couple of weeks, like sending her chants or sounds that come through. And so it's almost like packaging it up with the voice, the sound current, that's something new. I've not done that before. And she's great. She can hear it, and so she's playing it while she's creating it, and it's such a cool part of the creative process that has just emerged. I love it. I know you'll love that.
Oh wow, yeah. Wow, yeah. So taking the sound and creating something visual, like it's like one layer at a time, and then making it like your cards are beyond, like when you're talking about it, and the visions and the insights that you get, the remembrance and the divine mother, everything is like sinking into my body as you're speaking. And yeah, your cards are so like, I when you look at them, you want to dive in and back into that space, because you really like these. Yeah, and actually a lot of the visuals that you have, I've also seen, like
Really?
world, yeah, like these waters and these, like the elements that you're using. It's really such a beautiful and magical place to see and remember. So yeah, that's amazing. Everything that you do is so beautiful. And yeah, just those visuals are also like sparks of remembrance and awakenings, initiations.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I love that. And is there anything that you want to share besides all of this? Is there anything that you're doing right now that you want to share with the listeners?
Oh, well, I guess my new book, Letters to a Starseed, is out. And so that's available on my website, which is rebeccacampbell.me. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay, so I will share the links as well in the
Thank
show
you.
notes. This conversation was so beautiful. It was like talking to a sister that I haven't met for a long time. So
I feel the same.
yeah, I'm so grateful that you took your time. Thank you so, so much. And
Thank you so much, Shireen.
love to you. Thank you, loving beings, for being here and sharing this time with me and my guests, and creating this beautiful web in the world of love and upliftment, so that we can create a more positive and peaceful world. And if you're inspired by this episode and you want to connect with Rebecca and her work, you can check her out at rebeccacampbell.me, and also Rebecca Campbell on Instagram and Facebook. And in the show notes, you also have the links to her website and also Letters to a Starseed if you want to check it out. So thank you for being here. Let's take a deep inhalation in through the nose, breathing in that new and loving energy into your body. And on the exhalation, release, ground down, and have a blessed and beautiful day. Om Shanti.